So to get around this, we need some sort of a weaker standards. So rather than saying that you always want to tell the truth regardless of everyone else does, you have to say that you want to tell the truth based on what you think other people are going to do reasonably. In particular, if you pay the externalities that you expect to have for different actions, then you can you don't give people the incentive to tell the truth regardless of what everyone else says, but you can get close without it being so fragile to collusion, because if you pay something that's more based on your own expectations, you don't have such an incentive to screw around with the other people, right? So in fact, the same logic as Green-Lafont in this paper by Williams, 1999, shows that any efficient system has to have the property that anytime you change a decision, you pay the average externality that you caused by changing that decision. VCG achieves this because it has you pay the actual externality you end up causing. But you don't need this. As long as we have some way to know what the expected externality is, then we can achieve this, right? So if this isn't based on others' information, then you can give money back to people, and that's not a problem, right? Because that won't impact what people have an incentive to say. They won't change their report in order to change the amount that other people pay, and there's not going to be collusion issues nearly as much anymore, because how much you pay is not so directly affected by what other people say, right? And in fact, many mechanisms in the real world are effectively expected externality mechanisms. The classic example of this is the standard sealed bid first price auction. So you can show that in the standard sealed bid first price auction, and this is sort of intuitive, what you're going to bid is what you think the next highest person values the object at. You're sort of going to say, well, I'm going to bring down my thing to just the point where I think I'm going to beat the next best guy, right? And so effectively, the first price auction is an expected externality mechanism, and you can immediately see it's much better along these issues. So for example, in the second price auction, I have a huge incentive. If the other guy knows I'm probably going to win the auction, I have a huge incentive to collude with him, because he's not going to win anyway. He might as well bid 0, right? And he doesn't care about that. And I'm happy to bid my value anyway, right? Because I get 0 either way as long as he bids 0. It's much harder to collude in the first price auction, because imagine we collude, and I say, oh, why don't you drop out and bid 0, and then I'll bid 0. Well, if I do that, then you have a huge incentive to come right back into the auction and bid a little bit and beat me, right? Whereas in the second price auction, that's not the case, because I might as well still bid the same thing, and just by changing what you bid without changing what I bid, I can pay a lot less. Also, in the first price auction, imagine that the revenue that we raise is given back to people other than the person who ends up winning, right? That doesn't change anyone's incentive, really. I mean, only a little bit, right? Because I might a little bit less want to win then. But it hardly changes things. Whereas in the second price auction, if you incentivize people by what the first person pays, the person who thinks they're second most is going to want to really raise their bid so as to get more money given back to them, right? Yeah, Mohammed.
But the way these auctions are run, these spectrum auctions, is first price, but people are observing, it's not sealed bid, they're observing the bid movement, then it's second price you can collude again. Because if there are two main opponents.
Oh yeah, it has to be a sealed bid in order for this to be.
Yes, I was just asking that in this real mechanism that they use, it's not sealed bid and it's first price. This behavior of second price that collusion was.
Oh, I mean, the open auction is basically the same as the.
Second price?
Yeah, I mean it's effectively equivalent.
Yeah, that was my
Yeah, that's right. That's called the English auction, and it's effectively equivalent to the second price auction.
Keep making bids until.
Yeah, exactly. Because then I always end up paying the point at which the next guy drops out, right? I just pay 1 cent above that. Unfortunately, it's not so clear. So this first price auction actually, despite the fact that it doesn't have these nice incentive properties and whatever, is actually a very robust institution that's used in a lot of places because it's not so sensitive to collusion and so forth. But in many other circumstances, it's not clear, say in these package auctions or whatever, what you could do that's sort of getting people to pay their expected externalities. And so I think one of the biggest problems throughout a whole bunch of areas of market design is basically how do you come up with things that are effectively expected externality mechanisms that you could actually use in practice. Okay, so summing up, there's really no perfect solution. Scientific and technical studies have the advantage that they usually have pretty good incentives, they incorporate expertise, but they leave out subjective private information. Contingent valuation surveys try to elicit this private information, but they give terrible incentives and no one takes them seriously. The VCG mechanism gives strong incentives, but has these terrible practical problems and gives really bad collective incentives. Expected externality mechanisms are more practically useful when they're feasible, but we really don't know how to make them work or implement them in many contexts. So in practice, we sort of have to combine little bits of these different approaches to get a good market design. And we have to be open to less clean alternatives with less clean incentives, things like voting. So most market designs that are thoughtful are never going to be based exclusively on one of these things, because we know they all have really bad trade-offs. They're going to think about putting together little bits of different things in different places, and hopefully that is how you'll try to approach practical problems that you face. Great. Thanks.